Well, Dan Lanning really likes his coaching staff. And why shouldn't he? Here we go.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. So if you have not already, like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to or watch this very show, which today is brought to you by our friends at LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions do apply. We'll talk Junior Adams extension. We'll talk a little football potpourri mailbag, and Oregon came up just short against Creighton. I have many thoughts. So, regrettably, my brother will not be joining the show today. We have dispersed from Las Vegas and we're back in our respective hometowns. But Junior Adams is going to continue, it appears, to make Eugene, Oregon his hometown because he has been given a little bit of a pay raise and a one-year extension that keeps him with the Ducks through the 2026 season. Now, he has been Oregon's receivers coach after coming down from Washington ahead of the 2022 season. And in the last couple of years, he has produced three, not one, not two, but 3 1,000-yard seasons. Just think about that for a moment. Oregon hadn't seen a 1,000-yard receiver since 2018 when Dylan Mitchell pulled it off. 19, 20 didn't count, 21. It had been several years. It had been 3 full seasons since Oregon had a 1,000-yard receiver, and it hasn't been a common occurrence. And we've seen it 3 times in the last couple of years. Or excuse me, I think Franklin actually had 800 yards and change last year. I'll double check that in a sec. But like the point I'm making is that is a tremendous endorsement of what Junior Adams has brought to that position. Oregon has not been known as a wide receiver school. It's not been a position in which Oregon has churned out players to the NFL draft. Troy Franklin is about to be the highest drafted Oregon wide receiver of my lifetime. And his development, which certainly did begin prior to Junior Adams' arrival, accelerated once Adams got there. And yeah, having a different offense coordinator that threw the ball down the field a little bit and incorporated wide receivers into the offense, that helped a pretty good amount. But when you look at each position group, Dan Lanning is assessing his coaching staff, and we're seeing an increased salary pool that he's giving out to various coaches here and there. It's all very well deserved. And I think Lanning understands the caliber of assistant coaches that he's got up and down this coaching roster, and they're really good. And I think that Adams and McLaughlin offensively are the biggest studs. And that's not to say that, Drew Maringer with tight ends or Alik Terry at the offensive line. How good could that guy be? Is he already, frankly? But I think that those two guys are the most perhaps coveted by other schools because of the way that they recruit. And we know that Lanning has got a tremendous emphasis on recruiting, and it's a big part of his identity as a coach and as a staff. And these two guys fit the mold. And whether you're looking at high school recruiting or transfer portal recruiting, which is certainly how you have to assess, well, how's this guy as a recruiter? How's the staff as a recruiter? You got to look at both those things basically equally. I think equally is the best way to assess, well, how are you going to be in talent acquisition? Can you bring in portal guys? Can you recruit and develop high school guys? And Junior Adams has shown that he can do both, right? He didn't recruit Troy Franklin, but he's recruited players of Troy Franklin's caliber. Guys like Gatlin Bear, who in a couple of years, I think will be the next Troy Franklin, or at least he very much reminds me of him once he gets back from his LDS mission in a couple of years for the 2026 season. Or you talk about Jeremiah McLaughlin, who my comp personally has been to Chase Cota. Or you look at Ryan Pelham, who he flipped from USC, and McLaughlin was a flip from Ohio State. The high school recruiting is well established. So then you look at development, you look at production, and Tez Johnson was a really good player whilst at Troy. Went for a 1,000-yard season. Troy Franklin was really good in 2021. Well, he was not utilized to his full potential, but he was good. He was solid. He was capable. He pops in 2022. He pops even more in 2023. That is what a developmental progression looks like. Very old school player, Troy Franklin. Just allow me to flush out this thought real quick. 2021, Troy Franklin is recruited by Mario Cristobal and company. That staff leaves. Franklin stays, doesn't hit the portal, contributes his freshman year, gets even better and is the number one receiver his second year, and then makes himself into a high round NFL draft pick in year 3. That's what old school college football used to be like all the time. It's a rarity nowadays, but Junior Adams has been a part of that. And so I think with the transfers, I haven't even mentioned every receiver that Junior Adams has recruited, but the position is consistently bringing in guys who are not just 4-star or blue chip recruits, but are guys that have really high expectations. And I think that keeping Junior Adams around, increases the likelihood you can retain a guy like a Kyler Casper, for instance, for, whether as a depth piece this year or Jurion Dickey. Those two guys going forward could be at the center of Oregon's wide receiver room. I think that Lanning knows what he's got here, and it's really, really good to see the investment being made, because there are some places, UCLA, for instance, our old friend Chip Kelly left there for a reason, which I'll touch on. UCLA had a defensive coordinator this past year by the name of D'Anton Lynn. D'Anton Lynn was one of the best coordinators in all of college football last year, because UCLA's defense has been terrible under Chip Kelly. It was getting better. Then, unfortunately, their defensive coordinator, I believe Bill McGovern was his name, he passed away due to health complications. And then they hired D'Anton Lynn, and he made UCLA into not all his own players, but just came in, changed the scheme, was calling the plays. We know Chip doesn't like to do a lot with defense. And D'Anton Lynn had UCLA as arguably the best defense in the Pac-12. Well, UCLA, as an athletic department, does not care about football the way that Oregon does. Because D'Anton Lynn should have been given a raise. He should have been able to get whatever he wants. Look at Washington, for instance. After the 2022 season, their offensive coordinator, Ryan Grubb, was interviewed by Alabama. Washington said, stay here. Stay here. We'll pay you $2 million. That's what you do when you're committed. When you've got good coaches, you're willing to pay. You're willing to pay them top dollar. You're willing to give them raises, invest in your staff, let them know that they're valued. UCLA let D'Anton Lynn go across the street to USC. That's what a lack of investment, that's what a lack of caring looks like. And so when I read these headlines that Lanning is, working with athletic director Rob Mullins and saying, hey, I want to have a bigger pool for my staff. I want to keep these guys here. I know how good they are, and they might be courted by, other opportunities, other schools. I like what that says about the program, and I like that Junior Adams is sticking around, because this guy's really good. Go back to his time in Eastern Washington. He coached Cooper Kupp. You look at the guys that he recruited and developed at Washington. If memory serves, correct me if I'm wrong, he was the wide receivers coach when they brought in guys like Rome Odunze, Jalen McMillan, and Jalen Polk. I believe those were all Junior Adams recruits. So his track record's been fantastic. The contract extension keeps him with the Ducks through 2026, or at the very least increases the buyout if someone wants to get him out of that. But I would love to just have him continue being in that position, because he is checking every single box for me about what you want in a position coach. Are you recruiting high school kids? Can you bring in portal guys? And are you getting production? Those are the 3 elements. And he's check, check, and check. So Troy Franklin, by the way, I believe had 800 yards in the 2022 season. But to have 2,000-yard receivers this past year is pretty darn impressive. Not bad for an offense that doesn't push the ball down the field. Wink. For those listening on podcasts, I gave a very sarcastic wink. I have non-sarcastic questions to answer about football, and we've still got to get to what happened on Saturday night. It was unfortunate, to say the least, and I have many, many thoughts. This week's March Madness Bracket highlight is brought to you by our friends at Nissan. Each week, we're picking one team that stands out, a team that's pushed it further than the rest, just like any of the all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs. These guys were able to take it to the next level. The North Carolina Tar Heels are the Nissan Armada. This one seed is as hardcore as it gets out there, so it's no wonder they secured a spot in the Sweet 16 this Thursday against Alabama in the NCAA tournament. They're a favorite pick by many to make a run for a championship. I've got them losing in the national title game. My bracket also stinks. The Iowa State Cyclones are the Nissan Pathfinder. They've been thrilling to watch and have really created a lane for themselves, entering the tournament as one of the hottest teams in the country, and they're playing Illinois in the Sweet 16. Good matchup there in the East region. The NC State Wolfpack are this week's Nissan Rogue. The team absolutely surprised everyone with a powerful performance in their first two games of the tournament. Wins over Texas Tech and Oakland have set them up to play Marquette in the Sweet 16. They say win life, go Rogue, and that's what the Wolfpack have done right here. Take the Nissan Rogue, Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop at nissanusa.com. This episode also brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Say goodbye to busted brackets like mine. Tragically, I spend so many hours and so much time, and my bracket stinks. But you can say goodbye to busted brackets with FanDuel. That is an entity that lets you bet on every game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a one seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 wins. That's it. First $5 bet. If it wins, boom, $200 to use on the point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. I like Houston. That's my pick. I like Houston. Just saying. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook and our official sportsbook sponsor here at the Locked On Network. Okay. Interesting question. Speaking of the transfer portal and such, which Junior Adams and the rest of this Oregon staff have had a propensity to succeed with in a rather big way. Got a question here from Zahim. Can we get your thoughts on the Kadyn Proctor situation? Yes, you absolutely can. So I will bring you up to speed for those who are not aware. You may be hearing, isn't that someone Oregon recruited? Where have I heard that before? Well, yes, that's somebody that Oregon recruited in the 2023 cycle. He's the #1 offensive tackle in the country. He's from the state of Iowa. He ended up choosing the University of Alabama. He played. He started every game. Had his ups and downs. You know, I think a little bit like Josh Connerly. Came out very highly recruited. Started as a true freshman. And, I mean, Proctor actually played more than Connerly did his true freshman year. But Proctor plays the entire year at Alabama. And then he goes into the transfer portal upon Nick Saban's retirement. And Proctor decides to transfer back home. He goes to Iowa to play for Kirk Ferentz and the Hawkeyes, our Big Ten brethren out there in Iowa City. Might be where that school's located. I don't know off the top of my head. I actually think it's Des Moines. I think they're in Des Moines. So he goes and transfers to Iowa. He's there for all of a couple of months. And then he decides, I'm going back to Alabama. And then Kirk Ferentz, the Iowa coach, is asked about all of this. And he gives kind of a tongue-in-cheek answer about, well, you know, Kadyn, we wish him the best. He did come here and, you know, take a lot of our NIL money and then go to Alabama. But, you know, on the plus side, I actually forgot the end of the line of what he said there off the top of my head. But basically, Kadyn Proctor went to Iowa and, according to Kirk Ferentz, took some NIL money from Hawkeye's donors and is now transferring back to Alabama in the same offseason. So here are my thoughts on the matter. Number one, I don't think Oregon is at risk of having this happen with any player that transfers in because Iowa is a really good football program. Very solid. Low ceiling, high floor. High floor football program over there in Des Moines with Kirk Ferentz. They can't score, but boy, they are hard to score on. So I think that for the Hawkeyes, their NIL collectives are, you know, obviously getting some level of support. Everyone's is. It's a matter of how much. I don't think that Oregon, if you have an arrangement in place with Division Street, which is Oregon's NIL collective, I don't know that there's another school you would want to depart because Division Street is widely viewed as one of the 5 best NIL collectives in the country. So if you come to Oregon and they say, yeah, we're going to be able to get you this much in name, image, and likeness deals, then there's not a super high chance that I can see that you would want to go elsewhere because, well, can you get something better than what you've got there? My guess is no. Like maybe some other place would, but Division Street is very good. So that's the first thought I have. The second thought is this is why the transfer portal and NIL being unleashed in the manners in which they were was just demonstrative of why the lack of governing structure in college football, broadly speaking, hurts the sport. Because this is, I don't know all of Kadyn Proctor's reasonings as to why he would transfer to Iowa, not even start spring football, and then hightail it back to Alabama. It sure looks like a cash grab. That's the way it appears. I don't know anything or know anyone. I haven't talked to anyone about the situation, but he literally, according to what we know publicly, transferred to Iowa, got some NIL money, put it in his bank account, went back to Alabama. That's a pretty shady thing to do. But when you allow, this is, yes, Kadyn Proctor's fault, but also the fault of people who have created a world in which this is possible. Because you unleashed NIL without restrictions and guidelines, and collectives can just exist and operate as their own entity. And they can't be affiliated with the university, but they, of course, associate with it. And then the NCAA had some rules about it, but then a couple of those got struck down in court in the Tennessee case. And then the transfer portal, you cannot have. I am not a fan. I'm pro transfer portal, but I am not pro transfer portal for everyone all the time, an unlimited amount of moves. If your coach leaves, anyone should be able to transfer anytime. I don't think there's any disagreement there. What I do disagree with is that every player should be a free agent every single season. I think that's utterly absurd. And I think that the NIL dollars being separate from the scholarship arrangement that you have with an athletic department and university writ large is also not a great ordeal. I don't think that is conducive to a positive environment for anybody. I don't think you're teaching kids the right lesson, which is, of course, what college is supposed to be about at some level. I know that gets thrown to the wayside, and I sound like old guys screaming at the sky and whatnot, but I don't think that's great for them. But I also don't think that it's realistic, because people say, well, it's just they're making money off and it's professional sports. They should. Okay, fine. Let's look at professional sports. You give me the professional sport in which you can not ever show up for work, still get paid, and then go to a competitor and start getting paid there. You show me the professional sports instance in which a player is a free agent at the end of every year. Some players are signed to 1-year deals. You know what those players also have to do? They have to stay throughout the course of the year. Okay, there are guys who have transferred in the middle of the season, or they're not going to play because of injury because they know they're going to leave or anything like that. Every now and then you see that in pro sports, and I don't care for it, by the way, right? Like James Harden, sitting out all the time and demanding a trade. Nobody likes all that sort of stuff. And it's not great for fans. My focus, first and foremost, is always about the fans, because fans are what makes sports great. It's what makes this show possible itself. So you can argue that universities and institutions have had too much power over the years over the players, but the pendulum is swinging too far in the other direction, and it somehow needs to be brought to rest. I don't know how. I don't know who does that, because the NCAA, when it comes to college football, doesn't have a whole heck of a lot of teeth on this front, but somebody needs to figure it out, because this is not a healthy environment. It is just not. So that's what I think about that. Question here from Bud. Who is DAT, D-A-T in all caps, Oregon football player that you have found most entertaining all time? Offense, defense, and special teams. Well, if you're asking about all three, like who's been the most dynamic player Oregon's ever had in all three phases, yeah, the answer is DeAnthony Thomas. But if you're asking most entertaining player of all time, DeAnthony's in the top 5, don't get me wrong. So is Michael James, so is Marcus Mariota, and Mariota is probably number 1. Mariota is probably number 1 because that guy could make some just ridiculously accurate throws. And look, Bo Nix was fantastic this past year, and he just had one of the best seasons, maybe the best individual season statistically in Oregon football history. But I'd still take Mariota. But it's close. It's close. I'd take Mariota. There was nobody like that guy. His acceleration in the open field, accuracy. Bo Nix, I think, had a little bit of a better and more consistent deep ball. But, yeah, I mean, Mariota is the most exciting player ever. All three phases, though, yeah, it's DeAnthony Thomas. There's not been an athlete. I won't say never, because there are a lot of great players in the country. And as I talked about earlier, Oregon recruits at a high level. No one's like DeAnthony Thomas. I still haven't seen a college football player that runs like that guy and is as twitchy as him. So, yeah, DeAnthony would be the option for all three phases, but Mariota overall. I have many overall big picture thoughts about what happened on Saturday night in Pittsburgh, Oregon, and Creighton. I also have thoughts about LinkedIn jobs, what you're hiring, when you're hiring for a small business. You want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn is not just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals that you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. That's why 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free over at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, let's talk about it. It was disappointing. I was not as upset personally as a fan of Oregon as I was when Oregon lost to Washington in the Pac-12 championship game. But certainly it was disappointing to see Oregon lose to Creighton because they played well enough to win the game, and in double overtime, they just got tired. They just got tired. Now, those watching on YouTube can see the bullet point I've written is Creighton got a little lucky. And I think they did, but guess what? That's March. Is sometimes the breaks go your way, sometimes they don't. So this segment is going to solely be dedicated to what happened in the game, what Oregon could have done differently. And we'll touch on a couple offseason things, but maybe get into that more as the week goes on. So Creighton got a little fortunate. So too did Oregon, by the way. Creighton was not hitting their threes early in this game. And I said going into it, on the reaction show after the big win over South Carolina on Thursday, which is great for so many reasons, that Creighton is a team that shoots a lot of threes. They have a bunch of threes and they have a big guy. And the big guy wasn't able to slow down and follow Dante. 26 and 20 rebounds in your last game as a Duck. I might have to dedicate a whole segment on the show this week to the way that Cousinard and Dante played over the last couple of weeks for this Oregon team. But Oregon was not defending well early in the game. That eventually got better, but then Creighton started hitting threes. And the Blue Jays hit 15 threes in this game. Oregon hit 7. And yet, Oregon should have won the game. Oregon had the ball up 4 with less than a minute to go and found a way to let the game get to overtime. And there were a couple of mistakes. Number one, I thought that, when Cousinard had the ball up 4, less than a minute to go, Creighton doesn't have to foul yet. I thought the shot Cousinard got was quality. It was a good look. He's been hitting floaters and attacking the basket. He had another 32 in this game. He was just amazing, that guy. And gosh, he played so hard. But he got a good look to go up 6, didn't hit it. Okay. I can live with that. Creighton comes down. They get a bucket. Now they're within 2. Then Dana Altman made a coaching mistake. He made a coaching mistake because the ball got inbounded to N'Faly Dante with Oregon in a 1-in-1 situation. And Dante is the one guy who amongst the free throw shooters you wouldn't want at the line. If I were a Creighton fan, obviously in hindsight you feel this way too, if I had seen that ball get inbounded, Dante catches it and he gets fouled. If I were a Creighton fan, I'm going, oh my gosh, yes. If he hits 2 free throws, good for him. But man, he's played almost the entire game. He's had to work incredibly hard, and he's not a great free throw shooter. Dante's like high 50s, low 60s or so over the course of his career. and has been, I think, just under 60% over the last couple weeks in the Pac-12 and NCAA tournament. So that was the mistake, was the ball getting inbounded to Dante. If you're Dana Altman, you have to find a way to get that ball to Cousinard or Shellstad or Tracy or Evans. Any one of them. Any one of them. Or, I can't recall if Oregon had a timeout in that particular moment. Take Dante out, put Rigsby in the game. Just get free throw shooters on the floor. And if you're going to have a non-free throw shooter in the game, then you have to have him be a screen setter, not someone who is able to have the ball inbounded to him. So that was a mistake. But then there was another mistake. If you go watch the play and look, Oregon was gassed. I mean, they've had a 7.5 player rotation for the last couple of weeks. And, a lot of teams get down to about an 8-man rotation, but I don't think Oregon has a true 8-man rotation the way that other teams do. Because I think other teams have had 8 guys that they can put on the floor and they can put out there for extended periods of time and get something from. Matt Prame was tweeting this out correctly during the game, and I think other people were noticing it as well, but anytime Rigsby or Oquendo or Mo Diawara came into the game, they were in there just to get the starters a break. Everything. And in the tournament, it of course worked. The numbers are undeniable. It was just Cousinard and Dante. Shellstad was a complimentary piece. No one else was consistently involved on offense. And you know what? Cousinard was scorching hot. And he wasn't as efficient in the Creighton game. Again, I think he was tired, but he was really efficient in the opening round win was against South Carolina. And this just became a 2-man show. It was the Cousinard Dante show. They were carrying Oregon, and everybody else that played was not contributing to their full potential. And part of that, statistically, like with the numbers they were putting up, is because Cousinard and Dante were doing a lot, but they were having to do a lot because other guys were just not able to do everything great all the time. And so I bring this up to say in that shot where Oregon needed one stop, they needed one stop with less than 10 seconds to go, Bam Tracy either doesn't make maximum effort for some reason. Watching Bam this year, he's not a great defender, but I don't get the sense he's someone who's super lazy. So I'm going to attribute this to just physical exhaustion here. If you watch the shot, they set the screen. Dante shows the help. Tracy wheels around going over the screen as he should, because you can't give up a 3 in that spot. Don't want to give up a 2 either, but you'd rather give up a 2 than a 3. Tracy comes around, guy drives, stops, and then Tracy just kind of puts his arms down and goes for the rebound. And he doesn't stay on top of the guy and gives him essentially an open fadeaway, 8 to 10 footer. And he hits it. Those were the 2 mistakes. And then, the third mistake you got to throw in there as well is Dante not hitting free throws. Like, go up there and, make at least one free throw. Even if you split the pair, even if you just make one, can't guarantee that Creighton will get a good look for 3. Not when Oregon knows they're going to have to go for a 3 in that spot, because the clock was probably a little bit too late to try and go for a 2 and a foul, but maybe they would have. I don't know. But those were the mistakes in order to me. Was inbounding the ball to Dante was the biggest mistake that Oregon made in the game. Tracy not being able to stay with his guy and giving him that quality of a look when you just need one stop to win the game. And then, at the other end, Cousinard got a good look on a floater, and unfortunately it just didn't fall. But, mistake number 3, Dante just not hitting free throws. And unfortunately, that's what it comes down to in March. Like, could this Oregon team have won a national championship? Probably not. Probably not. Could they have made a run to the Final Four? Absolutely. It's March. Crazier things have happened. And, you look at what NC State is doing. NC State won 5 games in 5 days to win the ACC tournament. Oregon won 3 games in the Pac-12 tournament. And they weren't going to get in otherwise. Neither team. And NC State's in the Sweet 16. Oregon could just as easily be there playing Tennessee. Could they have beaten Tennessee? Sure. Anytime you got Cousinard, who in the 2 NCAA tournament games averaging 36 a contest, and you got Dante, who's just a beast and a force down low in so many facets at both ends of the floor. It was disappointing, right? What was I frustrated? Was I like, oh my gosh, they missed such a huge opportunity? No. Important to understand. This was such a great end of the year. And I'm going to talk about this more as the week goes along because I have several thoughts on the matter, but this was a great end of the year. This was exciting. This was fun. It was great to be there. It was great to have a chance. Did I ever feel like this team was Final Four capable? No. But did I feel like they could get to the Sweet 16, maybe the Elite 8? Yeah. And if you get there, maybe you get a lucky break, every now and then. I don't know. But, you want to give yourself a chance. They did that. And unfortunately, that final sequence, that's rough. Like the number of times, if the other team had the ball and Oregon was down 4 with less than a minute to go, I would not feel great in any way, shape, or form that Oregon would be able to get to overtime. I know it'd be hard and everything would have to go your way. And it did. That just sucks sometimes. And that's how Oregon's the Oregon careers end for Cousinard and Dante. And that part of it stinks. So, Oregon was right there, had a chance, felt at several times down the stretch like they were going to put the nail in the coffin, win the game, and they just couldn't do it. And you went to your two guys who were getting you there, but Dante missed a free throw, Cousinard missed a floater, Cousinard couldn't hit the game winner. Who else are you going to go to in those spots? They got good looks, just couldn't get it done. Quick note, Oregon baseball won another Pac-12 series. That's 3 straight series wins to begin Pac-12 play. They've got a 4-game set with Seattle U and a non-conference slate out of the Western Athletic Conference this week. They're 15-7 this year. Solid place to be for Mark Wasikowski's team. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.